Oh, yeah. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for stopping by and welcome to the Buckeye Zone. This is where we break down anything and everything related to our favorite college football program, the Ohio State Buckeyes. On today's show, we are going to be discussing the 2021 NFL Draft. And one of the main topics I wanted to cover would be the coverage going into it of Justin Fields and the nonsense that was going around, all the speculation, good prior month, a month and a half leading up to the draft, saying that Justin Fields was going to slip. He was going to drop like a rock. Some were starting to speculate that he was going to drop just like Aaron Rodgers did back in the day when he was eligible. And there was one NFL scout, if you can believe it, came out and said that Justin was being graded as a 4th round pick. Yeah, no, I didn't believe that. Hopefully none of you were thinking that as well. I'm pretty sure everybody thought Justin would go a little bit higher than he did, especially after the 2019 season. He looked like to be a sure number 2 pick overall, right behind Trevor Lawrence. And that ended up not being the case. But I wanted to, pretty much dominate today's show, just going over and covering the nonsense that was going on beforehand, talking about Justin. Because obviously we love Justin. He's probably one of the best, if not the best, quarterback prospect that has come out of this great university. He's done a tremendous amount of things in his very short career with the Buckeyes when he transferred over from Georgia. He basically only played a year and a half, but he did amazing things. He was a Heisman Trophy candidate finalist after the 2019 season. Before that Clemson game that year, he had 40 touchdown passes to only 1 interception. Just simply remarkable. He had ran the ball effectively, obviously threw it effectively. He had completion percentage over 70%. Total with that year and a half, it was, I believe, 68%. He won 2 conference championships for us, led us to the playoffs 2 straight years. He did remarkable things, and I feel like he got slighted. I don't know how you say it, but it just didn't seem he got some fair coverage leading up to this draft, and I just wanted to cover some of the things that that had come out and just put those things to rest. How ridiculous some of these things were. The first thing, I don't really even want to cover it, but I heard it from ESPN. I heard it from a couple other sources, and I really don't pay attention a whole lot to ESPN because it seems like they are constantly pushing the race card. But they said that, one reason why Justin wasn't getting as much love as he should have been was because he was a black quarterback. And, that's just ridiculous. If that was the case, then Trey Lance wouldn't have been near the top. Obviously, he went number 3 overall to the San Francisco 49ers, and it's just a ridiculous argument. I hate even mentioning it, and that's why it's number 1 on my list, so I can just knock it out and get rid of it as soon as possible. I understand if you want to say, there's maybe some racism in the NFL because there's no black owners, general managers. There's very limited number of black head coaches. I understand that aspect of it. I really do. But the top 4 earning players are black quarterbacks. You got Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, and Russell Wilson. That's right. The top 4 earning players are black quarterbacks. And the whole racism card just gets thrown out the window here. If you look at those statistics and drive it home, black quarterbacks have been drafted number one numerous times in the last 2 decades, going back to 2001, Michael Vick. 2007, you got Jamarcus Russell. 2011, Cam Newton. 2015, Jameis Winston. And 2019, Kyler Murray. And along the way, in there were numerous black players who have been drafted number one. So the idea that, race has anything to do with it, it's just ridiculous. And I just wanted to knock that one out real quick because I just think it's ludicrous. Another reason that people were saying that you might be seeing Justin Fields' draft stock being lowered was because of his poor work ethic. I had not heard any such stories leading up to that point that he has a poor work ethic. Somewhere someone said that he was like the first or the last guy in, the first guy out. Basically, just saying that he just doesn't put the time and effort into it, his craft. And from everything I've seen, that's just ridiculous. And he was, if not the hardest worker as far as trying to get the season back on track when the Big Ten and it looked like all of college football was going to cancel the 2020 season due to the pandemic. He was right there along with Trevor Lawrence pushing hard to get this season up and running. If he had a poor work ethic, I think he would have cared less. Like I said, in 2019, after that season, he was already projected to be the number 2 overall player to be selected. He wouldn't have cared, but he really did want to play and show everybody that, it just wasn't one great season. He was ready to go and fight for the season to be played. And if he wasn't committed, he wouldn't have became vegan and lost 15 pounds. He knew after that Clemson loss in 2019 that he needed to get faster. He needed to shed some weight. And that takes some commitment. That takes a solid work ethic. Instead of just laying around, oh no, the season got canceled, I'm going to just sit on my couch and do nothing and gain 15 pounds. I think a lot of us probably would have done that. But no, he was committed, man. He worked on his craft. He lost the weight. That says a lot to me that, he was ready to put the work in, and he did. It showed. So poor work ethic, that once again is ridiculous. And it's unfortunate that we've got to talk. I got a number of talking points here of reasons why people thought, his draft stock should be lowered. And another one would be that the fact that he played in some bad games, pointing towards the Indiana game and Northwestern. Okay. Like, seriously, you're not allowed to have a bad game here and there. I mean, it's going to happen. The IU game, yeah, it looked bad. He was, forcing the ball into some tight windows. He didn't look like himself. There was one play where he was like being tackled and he threw the ball all off balance as he was going to the ground, and he wasn't protecting the ball like he had done the previous season. And honestly, I think he was just forcing it. You're going to get into trouble when you start doing things that he was doing. I seriously think he was just trying to make some plays. I think he thought he could still sneak into the Heisman Trophy race by making plays, and it just wasn't going to happen. You're already starting from behind because the other teams, they had already played a month, maybe 5-6 games before you. It just, he was trying to do too much, and it definitely showed in that game. I think he threw 3 interceptions. It was just uncanny, uncharacteristic of him, and that's not the quarterback we know and love. QB number 1 out there throwing the ball around. That just wasn't him. And that Northwestern game, I think he injured his throwing thumb in that game. It also looked bad because he didn't have his number one target out there with Chris Olave. I think he was out because of COVID restrictions. And his number two option obviously was struggling to be that number one threat. And Northwestern did a good job of minimizing Garrett Wilson that day. So, basically he had his top two targets out. Obviously Wilson was still out there, but, they were double coveraging him and he seemed to struggle. So it was not a good game, but you're not allowed to have a good game. I mean, you're looking at people like Zach Wilson, who played far less superior, talented teams in competition. He was struggling against teams like Coastal Carolina. Really? Coastal Carolina. Nah, if I was going to pick, I would definitely be picking Fields over Wilson. And, I tend to give guys a break here and there. Like, it's hard to be perfect every single game. It really is. And these guys that are knocking Fields because, he had two bad games. All right, well, what about the Clemson game? If you're going to look at the bad games, why don't you look at the good games? I mean, he destroyed Dabo Swinney. Like, destroyed him in that playoff game. And that's after taking a vicious hit. Obviously it came out to be an illegal hit to his ribs. He probably broke some ribs. I don't know if it came out that he did or not, but, obviously it looks painful. And he stayed in the game and he continued to light him up in that second half. So, if you're going to look at the bad things, you might as well look at the good things too. Also, coming out, it said that, he doesn't read the defenses very well. He doesn't go through his progression. He locks on to his first target. Man, all I know is that Clemson playoff game here in 2020, there was one fantastic view. It was like an overhead view of Justin. And just on one play as one example, he completely shreds that argument. It was in the second half. It was that deep bomb that he had to Chris Olave. It was like, 50, 60 yards down the field for a touchdown. His first option on that play, if you notice, he turns to the right, and I think it was Rucker, or it was definitely a tight end, coming off the line, running a flat. That was his first target. Then you can clearly see his head move back to the middle of the field, and he had a wide receiver doing a crossing route, maybe 8 to 12 yards down the field. But then his third option, he looks down the field, and the safety is in too much. Olave's got his man beat, the corner beat, running down the middle of the field deep, and there's no way that safety is going to be able to catch up. And he unloaded. And you can clearly see that was his third option. So the fact that he can't read a defense, or he doesn't go through his progressions, locks onto his first target, just one play alone completely shredded that argument. Another one was that he holds on to the ball and takes too many sacks. That's ridiculous by itself. Yeah, okay. I'll be the first to admit that he took a lot of sacks during his career at Ohio State. That's fine. But maybe he's paid too much attention maybe to the news media saying that, Ohio State has one of the best offensive lines in America. Oh, they also have one of the best wide receiver groups in all of America. Okay, well, if that's the case, why not hold on to the ball for an extra second or two? You don't think that the offensive line is going to give you that protection that you need? You don't think the wide receivers are, if they have an extra second or two, they're going to find some space and get open? Yeah, I would. I mean, that's all you hear is that they've got a great offensive line, great wide receivers. Trust them. Urban Meyer comes out and says, during his time as a head coach at Ohio State, a quarterback is only as good as those around him, or as a product of those around him. Yeah, okay. Ohio State's great. They got a great offense. but it takes more than just a great quarterback. You also got great running backs out there that can help with the pass protection or help with the passing game. So yeah, I'm gonna believe in my guys, and I'm gonna believe that they're going to give me the time that I need to make a completion here. At the same time, I would much rather have Justin take a sack than an interception. I mean, any day of the week, I would rather choose that than an interception. Take those sacks. At least you're not turning the ball over. At least you're still giving your team a chance. I mean, depending on what down it is, you still might have a down. Or even if it's on third down, you get to punt the ball. You get to dictate the outcome of that scenario versus a interception where it could go back for a pick six. Yeah, I'll take a sack any day over an interception. So that whole argument is ridiculous as itself. And I got a couple more here. Another criticism is basically a general one where it says all Ohio State quarterbacks fail in the NFL. And, you know, I'm getting really tired of that argument. I mean, yeah, it's true. But honestly, it's hard to find a quarterback that is going to be able to play in the league. I mean, there's been plenty of general managers and head coaches that have lost their jobs because they just can't find the right quarterback. They seriously cannot do that. It's the toughest position to evaluate in all of sports. You know, you can be a great college quarterback and then do absolutely nothing in the NFL. There's been Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks that have just done nothing. And it's very difficult to figure that position out. I mean, you get guys like Tony Romo and Kurt Warner, who are undrafted quarterbacks who played at small colleges, and they've gone on to have very good, very successful careers in the NFL. You know, guys that have won a Super Bowl, guys that made Pro Bowls, guys that are in the Hall of Fame. You know, Kurt Warner made the NFL. So it's like, it's very difficult to evaluate that position. And, you know, which school is actually pumping out starting NFL quarterbacks on a consistent basis? I mean, I'll just sit here and wait for your answer. I mean, of recent years, yeah, Oklahoma has done a pretty good job. But other schools like Texas, USC, Florida, Georgia, they're not really, you know, pumping them out. You know, the team up north, you want to use them as an example? Who do they got other than Brady? You know, not too many. Notre Dame, not too many. Cool, they got Joe Montana, but like of recent years, who do they got? Clemson, okay. Watson, but and you know, the book will be out on Trevor Lawrence. You know, Alabama, who do they got? Like their guys aren't really setting the world on fire. You know, it's difficult to make that transition. And, you know, it sucks because that's the narrative out there. And I hope that, you know, Fields can be the outlier and he can go on and have a very successful pro career. And at some point, we're going to have one or two coming up. I have total faith in Ryan Day. I truly believe he'll be able to break the mold and we'll start pumping out quarterbacks into the league and they're going to start being successful. You know, time will tell. And hopefully, you know, he proves me right. And, you know, the people are saying, you know, oh, look at Dwayne Haskins. You know, Fields is going to be the same as Dwayne Haskins. I'm thinking, are you guys nuts? Like, seriously, did you guys watch any Ohio State football games? They're completely different quarterbacks. I mean, for one, Haskins is starting to flame out because, you know, it's reported that, you know, he's got some maturity issues. All right, well, I haven't heard the same thing about Fields. As far as I know, he's got his head on right and he's focused. So he's going to be different than Haskins in that aspect. But at the same time, there are two totally different types of players. Haskins didn't run the ball at all. And Fields, while he didn't run nearly as often as we thought he would, maybe he would have if Meyer was his head coach, and the way that, Braxton ran and JT Barrett, but it was Ryan Day's offense. You could clearly see that. And the quarterback read option was there, but Ryan Day wants his quarterbacks to throw the ball first. And Fields, he did a magnificent job, in my opinion, with throwing the ball. Haskins, whenever he did the quarterback read option, whatever, everybody knew he wasn't going to run the ball. That's why you saw the running game struggle with Weber and Dobbins, because every time they showed that play, he would always hand the ball off. He would never pull it in and take off and run. The only time he really did it was in that Maryland game where he had 2 rushing touchdowns, and that was a complete shootout because the defense that year was garbage. And they took everything in that game to win. I think they almost lost it there at the very end. But Haskins never really pulled the ball in and ran. Whereas Justin Fields, on his NFL pro day there at Ohio State, he ran the 40-yard dash in 4.4. That's awesome. That's one of the fastest times ever by a quarterback. So the fact that, people are comparing Haskins to Fields, there is no comparison. Haskins, a lot of his yards, he was just throwing bubble screens or those bump passes to Paris Campbell, who would take it 50, 60, 70, 80 yards sometimes, where, most of Justin Fields, his passes were down the field. He was doing an excellent job. He wasn't relying on, a guide making something happen like Paris Campbell. So 2 totally different quarterbacks. The argument that, they're the same player, that's just nonsense. And finally, to try to wrap this up, one of the criticisms was that he gets hurt a lot, or he's injured. And yeah, he would get hurt a lot, but he wasn't never injured. Hurt, you can still play. Injured, you're knocked out. And as far as I remember, he never missed any games because of an injury. He always played. In that Clemson game, I was thinking, at halftime they should just take him out, put CJ Stroud in, and hope for the best. But he stayed in the game. He fought hard for the season to play, because I think he truly believed that the team was good enough to win a national title. He wanted to get back to that game, and they sacrificed a lot to get back to that game, and there was nothing that was going to keep him out. Even a vicious hit to the ribs wasn't going to knock him out of that game. But, yeah, okay, he hurt his knee, against, the team up north in 2019. He was out for one play and came back in, threw a strike to Wilson, and for that touchdown in the corner. He hurt his thumb a couple of times. He is not going to come out of the game. Okay, he gets hurt, but he never got knocked out of the game. He always came back and he played well. So that's just, more things. I mean, I covered 8, 9 things right there. People were criticizing Justin Fields for, and, it was sad to see. And I honestly believe Fields, should not have been the 4th quarterback selected. He ended up going behind Lawrence. Okay, that's fine, I guess. But behind Zach Wilson, behind Trey Lance, and some people were saying Mac Jones should go in front of Fields. I don't know, man. It seems ridiculous. In the end, he didn't slip too far. He was drafted number 11 overall in the first round to the Chicago Bears. I wish he was, maybe picked up by the 49ers or the Carolina Panthers. I believe in Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers, what he can do with quarterbacks. Joe Brady, what he did with Joe Burrow, as his offensive coordinator, quarterback coach down in LSU. I think that would have been kind of awesome to see him there at Carolina. But, who knows how long Joe Brady is going to be there coaching as an offensive coordinator. And the other team would have been the Denver Broncos. I wish he would have gone to. They've got some weapons there. Kind of break the mold of, John Elway not being able to pick up a solid quarterback in the draft. I mean, he's obviously had success with Peyton Manning, but, his track record with picking a quarterback hasn't been that great. So, that would have been kind of fun to watch. But, he ended up going to the Bears. People are saying, Matt Nagy is supposed to be an offensive guru. Obviously it hasn't worked out so far in Chicago. But then again, I never believed in Mitchell Trubisky as a quarterback. A lot of people did. Maybe he had some traits that people liked, but I never thought, he was a first-round quarterback. And then obviously, with Nick Foles, no, I don't really believe in his game either. So, maybe Matt Nagy can get things going there in Chicago with Justin. Hopefully he can. I really like Fields, and, hopefully he can do some damage there. And, listening to Colin Cowherd, he went off and said that, this was actually a pretty good spot for Fields. He said that, now that in the offseason they picked up Andy Dalton, and maybe they can do something similar like they did with the Kansas City Chiefs. Dalton can be kind of like that Alex Smith transition period where Fields can act like Mahomes and learn from a veteran quarterback, see how it's done, learn for a year, sit back, just wait your turn, and then let loose in your second year. Maybe that's the case. I know Justin's itching to get onto the field as soon as possible to be starting quarterback day one, but maybe it's not a terrible thing to sit back and just wait your turn. Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years behind Brett Favre, and he's had a outstanding career. So I don't know. I don't know what the best way to handle it. Everybody has their own theory, whether a rookie quarterback should start from day one or he should sit a year. I really don't know if there's a particular method that's the best, but, time will tell. But Colin Cowherd also went out and said that, NFC North is actually a winnable division. Other than the Packers, Bears could be the second best team. They've still got a great defense. They still got Khalil Mack running around creating havoc. We'll see what happens with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers is threatening retirement. He wants to be traded. We'll see what happens there. But it's, after that, Minnesota Vikings weren't completely sold on Kirk Cousins. There's now it's come out that it's been reported that the Vikings were trying to move up in the draft, and their target would have been Justin Fields. But Kirk Cousins doesn't really scare anybody. And the Lions traded away Matthew Stafford to get Jared Goff. Who knows exactly what's going on there, because it's the Detroit Lions. But, they don't scare anybody. They've never really done anything. So, in the end, it may work out for Justin and the Chicago Bears, and hopefully that does happen for him. But, we've talked quite a bit about Justin here, and, I want to get, talking about some of the other guys that got drafted. Because overall, it was a really good draft for Ohio State. Fox Sports came out and said that Ohio State and Bama tied for the most selections. They end up having 10 each, which is awesome. Rounding out the other top schools, Georgia and Notre Dame tied for 9, and the team up north and Florida had 8. So, if you're paying attention to the offseason and recruiting rankings and where they're at, these schools are always dominating. They're always up near the top 5 as far as, the best players that are coming to their universities. And, so it should be no surprise that these schools are up at the top with the most players getting drafted. And, those 10 players for Ohio State, we already covered. Fields was in the first round at number 11 to the Chicago Bears. In the second round, they had linebacker Pete Warner to the Saints and offensive lineman Josh Myers to the Green Bay Packers. 3 guys in the third round, Wyatt Davis to the Vikings, Trey Sermon to the 49ers, and Baron Browning, linebacker to the Denver Broncos. A guy in the fourth round, defensive lineman Tommy Togiai to the Cleveland Browns. 2 guys in the fifth round, Luke Farrell to the Jaguars and Shaun Wade to the Baltimore Ravens. And the final guy that got drafted was Jonathan Cooper. It was good to see him get drafted to the Denver Broncos. We had other guys that signed free agent contracts who were not drafted. Tuff Borland to the Vikings, Drew Chrisman to the Bengals, Blake Hobbiel to the Titans, Jake Hausman to the Lions, and Justin Hilliard to the 49ers. And I think CJ Saunders got picked up as well. But you know what? It was overall a great draft for the Buckeyes. I was kind of surprised by Wyatt Davis and Shaun Wade. I think at one time they were supposed to be first-round picks. And I know, Shaun Wade, his draft stock really got hurt by coming back to play. He was projected to be a first-round pick, I believe. And he just did not have a great 2020 season. Came out after the fact, said that, he had hurt his groin, had a procedure done, just wasn't healthy throughout the season. And it definitely showed at times. That definitely hurt his draft stock. And he was also kind of learning a new position. He was still a cornerback, but, in 2019, he did a great job and was covering the slot receivers. And then in 2020, he wanted to make that transition to covering the outside receivers. I don't know, just a combination of, COVID, limiting practices, those off-season workouts, injury, everything just didn't work out in his favor. And you saw his draft stock really drop. Hopefully he can bounce back and have a successful NFL career. Hopefully he's got his head on straight and has a solid work ethic and wants to prove people wrong. And, he can do some special things with John Harbaugh's defense over there in Baltimore. But, those were definitely 2 big surprises for me. Another one was Pete Warner. He was a second-round draft pick. I don't know if that was necessarily a reach for the Saints. I know, the Saints love Ohio State guys, and they're constantly picking up Buckeyes. But, Pete Warner as a second-round guy, it seemed like a stretch. So, hopefully he does some good things there with the Saints, but that was definitely a surprise to me. Denver picked up 2 defensive players, Baron Browning and Jonathan Cooper. So, I don't know. Time will tell with that, but the head coach there, Vic Fangio, he's a big defensive guy. And I think it came out, in an interview that he said that, he wanted to try to use Jonathan Cooper as an outside linebacker. He definitely worked out during the pro day at that position. Hopefully he does some good things there. Hopefully he makes the team. I like to see, all these Buckeyes succeed and whatnot, but, I don't know if he's fast enough to play that position, but, we'll see. It'll definitely be a transition for him, but, he could definitely step in and help out their team for sure. But, just rounding out this, this podcast here for the show, the Buckeyes, have been doing a great job with, churning out some NFL talent. They're second place here since 2000 with the most players being drafted. Obviously, number 1 is Alabama. Bama's had 41 players drafted since 2000 in the, I believe in the first round. Buckeyes have had 35. So, once again, if you're paying attention to recruiting rankings, getting these 4- and 5-star guys, There's been some 3-star guys too that they've helped develop, but they should be at the top of that list as far as getting number 1 draft picks selected. But then overall, we're looking at the conferences that put out the most NFL talent. The SEC dominated once again. They have for the last 18 out of the last 20 years have put out the most guys in the league. It's not really a surprise. And I know a lot of people say, oh, SEC bias, but it helps that, they play in the warmer climate. They're able to train outside throughout the year. They're getting the most talent as far as recruiting. They're putting out the most talent into the league. It's not really a surprise. So I don't know why people think it's SEC biased, but that's just what they do. That's where you go if you want to go play in the NFL. You just go to the SEC, and it's good to see Ohio State's trying to keep up with that. I thought it was kind of a joke this past year, especially in the first round. Just wanted to slip in a little jab there to the Big 12 because they didn't have anybody selected, and that's rough, man. But you know what? It is what it is. Ohio State, they continue getting these highly recruited high school players, and they develop them. They are putting them in the league. It's great to see because that just means our university is getting much more recognition moving forward, and guys want to come here, which makes Ohio State look good. And by winning against these games against your rivals, winning these conference championships, getting into the playoffs just makes you look that much better and more enticing to these 4- and 5-star guys. So moving forward, I don't see them slowing down at all. I have complete faith in Brian Day, his coaching staff, Larry Johnson, Brian Hartline. They're doing phenomenal jobs getting these highly recruited high school players. And moving forward, I'm excited to see what this next year is going to bring. They're definitely going to be having some dudes drafted very high in this next year's draft. But, that's just looking too far into the future for me. I'm excited to see what they can do in this upcoming season. Hopefully you are too. I've enjoyed breaking this down, this NFL draft in our 3rd show. Hopefully you've been enjoying it as well. Please feel free to visit our other social media pages on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube. I'm not sure where you're listening to this podcast, but it's on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you can find it. But you know what? Go to our other social media pages, mainly Facebook. Like, subscribe, hit those buttons. Definitely leave me a comment or two, a question. I'll be more than willing to answer those comments or questions here on the podcast. I think it'll be fun if I can get some people to interact with me on the show. Moving forward, I'm going to continue to try to put these shows out once a week. This past week, I actually lost my voice. So obviously I couldn't record anything, but moving forward, I'm going to try to knock them out once a week, and got some other shows planned. Hopefully you guys will come back and listen to those. And you know what? Thanks again for stopping by, Buckeye Nation. It's been a pleasure. I enjoy talking about the Ohio State football team, and I look forward to speaking with you guys coming up very soon. And you know what, you guys, until next week, have a great rest of this week. And remember, OH, and go Bucks.